Hello! I am currently feeling less like a mucus factory than I have felt in the last week and a half, although I think that as I'm trying to do this video, the mucus is kind of staging a resurgence and trying to stop me from going on, but you know, the video has to be made, so I'm just gonna keep going. A few weeks ago, I reviewed Alfred Hitchcock's 1940 film, Rebecca, and today I'm going to talk briefly about the BBC's 1997 adaptation starring Emilia Fox as the second Mrs. De Winter, Charles Dance as Maxim De Winter, and Diana Rigg as Mrs. Danvers. It's a 3-hour-long program in 2 parts telling the same Daphne du Maurier story about the paid companion who marries a rich, mysterious widower and gets whisked away to his estate, where she finds herself competing with the omnipresent memory of his dead first wife. This version was actually my first introduction to Rebecca, and it's still probably the one I'm most familiar with since I saw it several times before I read the book or saw the 1940 version. The first film was made just 2 years after the book was published, so recreating the past isn't as big a deal as it is here, where we're presented with a slice of late 1920s culture, complete with era-appropriate outfits, set pieces, vehicles. I think Emilia Fox plays the lead with slightly more worldly wiseness than her predecessor Joan Fontaine. They dispensed with a lot of her character's early klutziness, and she seems at liberty to be more playful with Maxim. I can't say how she compares with her other predecessor in the BBC's 1979 version, Joanna David, who also happens to be her mother. Maxim De Winter is played by Charles Dance, and my mom will bop me on the bean if I say anything critical of his performance. Not that I have anything critical to say, really. He's much older than Fox, but they generally have good chemistry, and they seem surprisingly well matched. On the whole, it's a much different relationship than the one that Joan Fontaine and Laurence Olivier created in 1940. Overall, this version tends to be more passionate. Obviously, the 1940 version had to work within certain restrictions, but I'm not just talking about displays of affection between husband and wife. I mean, the characters, many of them, display more emotion. Diana Rigg as Mrs. Danvers is creepy and disturbing, of course, but she's surprisingly expressive. More sneering and openly derisive of the second Mrs. De Winter, but on the flip side, we see her break down into tears twice. Likewise, Jonathan Cake as Jack Favell, who constantly has this smirk on his face like he's thinking of something extremely inappropriate, gets much more emotional towards the end of the story than George Sanders did. There's a pretty violent reenactment of a crime, which is a shock if you're coming fresh off the 1940 version, but the inclusion of it means that, at least in this instance, this version follows the book more closely. And as far as the ending goes, I know I said that I don't pay much attention to similarities between Jane Eyre and Rebecca, but wow! In one aspect of the outcome, the resemblance is extremely obvious. I couldn't help but notice. One other thing that I absolutely have to mention is that one distinguishing feature of this version is that we see Rebecca, not as a whole, but as fragments of Maxim's memory. We catch glimpses of her eyes, her mouth, her hands, usually surrounded by smoke from her cigarette. Very vampy. It does take away from some of the mystery and myth surrounding her, but I don't mind it so much, except for her voice. How people could be fawning all over someone with such a smug, annoying voice seems far-fetched to me. Oh, I almost forgot. You know who else is in this? Ian McDiarmid. Is it McDermott or McDiarmid? I don't know. The evil emperor himself is in this movie as the coroner, and that was funny just because, you know, when I had seen it before, I hadn't seen Star Wars at all. So this was the first time rewatching it, knowing him as Emperor Palpatine, and it was funny all of a sudden, just because there he was. he's also kind of a funny little character in this. Also, I like the music, especially the opening titles theme, the Rebecca theme. It's very something. So those are a few thoughts on the BBC's 1997 version of Rebecca. I guess I don't have a strong preference for one version over the other. If at any given time I do lean toward one, that doesn't mean that I won't change my mind in favor of the other later. Both versions are very different, but they both have an interesting, creative way of telling the story, and I can enjoy both of them pretty equally. Let me know if you have any thoughts on this one, and as always, thanks for watching. Bye!